Hello, Professor. My name is Carlos, and this is the mural I'm going to talk to you about. So this mural is painted by Diego Rivera. It's called Diego Rivera's Dream on a Sunday afternoon in Alameda Park, which took place in Mexico City. Excuse me. Um, this mural was painted by Diego Rivera. It was painted for the hotel of Del Prado. The actual size, the actual mirror is 4.8 meters times 14.8 meters. Um, According to DiegoRivera.org, the mural displays three different aspects of Mexican history. So right here in the corner on this section, you have Hernan Cortez, and then you have the Mexican dictator, um, Porfolio Diaz, and then the 1910 Mexican Revolution. So I'm going to talk to you about Hernan Cortez. Hernan Cortez, according to Dr. Estrada in his YouTube lecture, the Spanish invasion of Tenochtitlan from 1519 to 1521. He was born in 1485. Um, he set sail to Tenochtitlan in 1519 all the way until like 1521. But before he set sail from Cuba. Uh, During that, he recruited 600 men with 11 ships, and a lot of people like to think of him as an explorer type of person instead of looking at him as a businessman, because that's what he was. With this voyage, he paid 7,000 ducats of his own money. Like, he invested on himself to seek more fortune, and because of that, a lot of people were actually paying to go on this voyage to seek further fortunes. Um, Unfortunately, this wasn't an official trip. This was an unofficial trip towards Mexico. So as soon as he recruited all his men, he set sail. He arrived in 1519, got greeted by the Mexica. Unfortunately, he was full of greed, and so was his men. So as soon as they saw gold, they wanted more and more and more and more and more. You can never have enough gold with these people. So there are many reasons why the Mexica fell. So the Spanish had superior weapons. So they had guns, they had swords, they had crossbows, they had horses, they had huge dogs that weighed up to 200 pounds. They would use those dogs to kill the Mexica, any native that stood in their way. They had steel armor plates all around their bodies to make sure they're secure. Um, Cortez was smart. He took advantage of the other natives. So the Mexica had a lot of enemies. So he recruited like around 100,000 natives from Tlaxcala, and he used them to take down the Mexica. Well, apart from just, battle alone, the crazy part was that the Mexica fell to germs. They weren't immune to the diseases that the Spanish carried. Smallpox was one of them, and that devastated the Mexica, and it destroyed like 40% of Mexicans all over Mexico. So now we're gonna talk about, let's see, we're gonna talk about Jose Posada. So Jose Posada is a famous Mexican artist from Mexico. So when you think of him, like basically he was the one that started painting like skulls, aka calaveras. Back in those days, he made it popular. He made it famous. So like when you think of like los Días de los Muertos or anything with a calavera, basically you think of Jose Posada. One of his famous art pieces was this one right here, the La Catrina. Now we're going to talk about the actual painting itself. The painting was painted by Jose Posada in 1913. Um, the painting resembled the rich elite from Mexico. So he painted this painting, and it was metaphor. It stood as a metaphor for like it criticized the rich elite, basically. There she is right there again. She is seen with a boa from the feathered Mesoamerican entity, Quetzalcoatl, around her neck. Sorry, I mispronounced that. Um, in uh, in the YouTube video, San Diego Rivera's dream of a Sunday afternoon in Alameda Park. In the mirror, you see La Catina, as you see her in the middle right there. She's shown holding Rivera's hand, and on the other, she's holding Posadas. In the same mural, you see Frida behind young Diego Rivera, and she is holding his shoulder, and then at the same time, well, on her other hand, she's holding a yin yang little pocket watch looking kind of thing. So basically, what that stood for was that stood for her complicated relationship with Diego Rivera. So yeah, now we're gonna talk about Cola. Frida Cola. She was born, according to Frida Foundation.org. Frida Cantlo was born on June 6, 1907, and later she died on July 13, 1954. Some of her famous art pieces were her self-titled 1926 self-portrait, Las Dos Fridas, and her self-portrait of her wearing a velvet dress. As I mentioned, the amulet, the little yin yang. So that resembled the complicated relationship they had because they were married in 1929. The funny thing is that Diego Rivera, well, Frida was a mentor, or Diego Rivera was her mentor, and they eventually they started a relationship and they eventually got married in 1929. But unfortunately, they split, but then they got back together, so that was a complicated relationship. But yeah, she is. Now we're going to talk about young Diego Rivera. So, Diego Rivera was born on December 8th of 1886 in Guanajuato, Mexico. His interest in art peaked in his early childhood, and then as soon as he was 10, he ended up going to the San Carlos Academy of Fine Arts in Mexico City. And ironically enough, one of his earliest influences for him was Jose Posada. According to Walter V. Scholes, we're gonna talk about Benito Juarez now. So Benito Juarez was the former president of Mexico. His presidency was not so long. It lasted from um, it lasted from 1861 to 1872. He was born on March 21st, 1800, and he later died on July 18th, 1876. And he started his education in 1821 in a church in Oaxaca, Institute of Arts and Science. And then, 10 years later, in 1821, he finally got his degree in law. And then in Mexico, conservatives were a problem to him because he was more on the liberal side. So in 1853, they were being exiled, so he fled the country. And then later in 1855, when Mexico was controlled by the liberals, he returned and he joined, I believe his name was Juan Alvarez's administration, and he was appointed justice. And then later on, Congress appointed him to the Supreme Court, and then which led to him becoming vice president. And then finally, in 1801, he became president himself. So during his presidency, he faced a lot of challenges. He had to deal with intruders. He had to deal with people like Maximilio, the Archduke of Austria, the Spanish, the French. But as soon as the Spanish found out that he was the Archduke was here, they just left. the French stayed, but they lost. Like for example, in May 5th, the Batalla of Puebla. You already know how that ended. Um, but yeah, apart from that, they had money issues. That's why Spain and France were here. Also, he had an iffy relationship with Congress. It seems like Congress didn't trust President of Mexico, Benito Juarez, which is very interesting because to have a stable networks and run a country, you gotta trust each other. But yeah, now we are gonna talk about. Oh, sorry. We're gonna talk about Ricardo Flores. He was an activist, anarchist. He was basically one. He was. He kind of gave the start somewhat to the politics of anarchy. He had a lot of different unusual political views and back in those days, so a lot of people found that strange. He was born on September 16, 1863, and he died in his cell on October 22nd, 1922. He was studying law. Um, During his time in school, he was an activist. He was a radical activist. In 1900, he started this press newspaper article or something like that in 1900. But he's been arrested multiple times for his radical way of thinking, protests, etc., etc. Um, I think after his third arrest, he left the country, but like a few years later, in 1905, he started his own party called Liberal Mexicano, and then as the years go by, he broke a bunch of acts, and a lot. He got arrested for for conspiracy and all these weird U.S. laws because that's where he was. So eventually, he got sent to prison for 18 years, and for those 18 years, he only got to serve 8 years, and unfortunately, he passed away in 1922. So that was uh, Fernando Flores. And now we're going to talk about Francisco Madero. According to biography.com, Francisco Madero was born in October 30th, 1873, in Parras, Mexico. He came from a really wealthy family. Um, he organized the anti-re-election party when he found out that the dictator of Mexico, Porfirio Diaz, was running for president again, and um, he ran for presidency in 1910. But unfortunately, he well, no, not unfortunately, but unfortunately, he did win the presidency, and Diaz was finally booted out. But unfortunately, his presidency did not last. He was president only a short time. He was president from 1910 all the way to 1913, and then in 1913, that's when he was assassinated. Yeah, but yeah, this is my mural of the mural for Diego Rivera and the Strode Alameda Park. It was really cool. Thank you.